Families are the building blocks of society. But what happens when the foundation begins to crack? This is the story of Stan, Lucy, and their son Jake. A family torn apart by pain, bitterness, and the heavy consequences of neglect.
I am sick and tired of all your drama. You keep giving me a hard time breathing and living. Must it always be about you? Let me have peace. I never wanted any of this. I hate you.
You are so irresponsible, never always there for your son, and you claim to be so busy doing nothing. Your son needs his father, and there you are living in mediocrity. I hate you.
Stop fighting, please. Oh no. Sorry, Mommy. Sorry, Daddy. Stop fighting, please.
Their journey reveals the struggles of single parenting, the cost of emotional absence, and the long road to healing. Join us as we delve into their lives and uncover the powerful lessons within. In the heart of Atlanta stood a modest home, worn by time and tension. Within its walls, Stan and Lucy's arguments echoed like thunder, shaking the fragile foundation of their family. Stan, a man of strength and labor, found solace in his work, but left his emotions locked away. Lucy, once vibrant and hopeful, had become consumed by frustration and bitterness. In their midst, young Jake, a bright 10-year-old boy, retreated to his room, seeking refuge from the storm. Clutching his favorite teddy bear, he pressed his hands over his ears, desperate to drown out the angry voices. Little did he know, the cracks in their family were widening, setting the stage for a painful journey that none of them could foresee. The day of the divorce was a silent one for Jake. He sat on the cold wooden bench of the courtroom, his feet barely touching the ground. The adults around him spoke in terms he couldn't fully grasp: custody arrangements, visitation rights, and irreconcilable differences. Lucy was granted full custody, while Stan would have visitation on weekends, a fragmented arrangement for a fractured family. As the judge's gavel fell, it signaled more than just the end of a marriage. For Jake, it was the beginning of a deep and enduring loneliness. He watched his parents walk out of the courtroom in opposite directions, carrying the weight of their failures, while he carried the weight of being caught in between. Life with Lucy became a cycle of struggle. Financial pressures loomed large, forcing her to take on multiple jobs. Her bitterness towards Stan grew with each passing day, and she often took her frustrations out on Jake without realizing it. Overprotective and emotionally distant, Lucy shielded Jake from the outside world, but failed to provide the warmth he desperately needed. Jake, yearning for connection, began to feel like a prisoner in his own home. He longed to run outside, to laugh and play like other children, but Lucy's sharp words and weary eyes kept him confined. In the silence of his room, Jake sketched pictures of families, whole and happy, a reflection of his unspoken desires. Meanwhile, Stan grappled with his own demons. Alone in his bachelor apartment, he often found himself staring at old family photos, the corners worn from his constant handling. Regret sat heavy on his chest as he replayed the arguments, the missed milestones, and the choices that led to his estrangement. Yet, pride kept him from picking up the phone. Stan buried himself in work, hoping to silence the nagging voice in his head that told him he had failed as a father. The distance between him and Jake grew wider with each passing day, leaving a void that neither of them knew how to fill. At school, Jake's loneliness became apparent to everyone except those who mattered most. While other children laughed and played during recess, Jake sat alone under the shade of an old oak tree. His sketchbook became his companion, each page filled with drawings that told stories of a life he wished he had. Teachers noticed his withdrawn demeanor, but attributed it to the difficulties of a broken home. Jake's isolation wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Each day, he built walls around his heart, higher and thicker, until he became almost invisible to those around him. As Jake entered his teenage years, the void left by his fractured family became a magnet for trouble. On the cracked streets of his neighborhood, he encountered Darnell, a charismatic figure who exuded confidence and danger in equal measure. Darnell saw potential in Jake, not as a friend, but as a recruit. Offering a sense of belonging and the allure of fast money, Darnell drew Jake into his world. What began as small favors and petty crimes soon escalated into something far more dangerous. Jake, desperate for acceptance, followed blindly, unaware that he was walking a path that would soon unravel everything he had left. Lucy's discovery of Jake's involvement with the wrong crowd was like a dagger to her heart. She confronted him in the cramped living room of their apartment, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. But her words, sharp and accusatory, pushed Jake further away. "You don't care about me," he shouted, slamming the door to his room. For Lucy, the pain was unbearable. She blamed herself for working too much, for being too harsh, for failing to protect her son from the darkness she had tried so hard to shield him from. In a diner on the outskirts of town, Stan met Jake for the first time in years. The meeting was tense, filled with long silences and brief, heated exchanges. Stan tried to apologize, to explain his absence, but Jake's walls were impenetrable. "You don't get to come back now," Jake said, his voice heavy with resentment. Stan left the diner that night more determined than ever, vowing to find a way to reach his son before it was too late. The turning point came during a robbery orchestrated by Darnell. Jake, now 16, found himself in the back room of a convenience store, a crowbar in his trembling hands. The sound of sirens in the distance sent his heart racing. For the first time, he questioned everything, but hesitation came too late. The police arrived, and Jake was taken into custody, the weight of his choices crashing down on him like a tidal wave. Lucy's knees buckled when she saw Jake in handcuffs. At the police station, she sat across from him, her tears falling freely. "Why, Jake? Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. But Jake could only shrug, his eyes avoiding hers. For Lucy, it was the culmination of every fear she'd ever had, a painful reminder that love alone had not been enough to save her son. Stan couldn't believe the news when he saw it on the television. Jake's mugshot flashed on the screen, alongside words that pierced his heart: juvenile arrest for armed robbery. He felt like the walls of his apartment were closing in. The memories of Jake as a child, smiling and full of potential, clashed violently with the reality of the troubled teen he had become. Stan knew he couldn't stay on the sidelines any longer. This was his son, and no matter how broken their relationship was, he had to try to fix it. But the question loomed heavy. Was it already too late? In the cold, sterile visitation room of the detention center, Stan sat across from Jake. The boy who had once looked up to him with admiration now stared at the floor, refusing to meet his gaze. Stan's voice wavered as he tried to apologize, to explain, to plead for another chance. But Jake's anger was a fortress, built brick by brick over years of disappointment. "You weren't there," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper, but heavy with pain. Stan left the facility that day with tears in his eyes, determined to break through the walls Jake had built, no matter how long it took. Inside the detention center, Jake's days were long and monotonous. But amidst the bleakness, he met Marcus, a fellow detainee with a kind heart and a story of redemption. Marcus had walked a similar path, but had found a way to turn his life around through writing and mentorship. Their conversations became a lifeline for Jake, who began to see that change was possible, even for someone like him. For the first time in years, Jake felt a glimmer of hope, a small but significant crack in the armor of his bitterness. Lucy, too, was undergoing a transformation. Encouraged by a co-worker, she attended a support group for single parents. At first, she resisted, unwilling to confront her own mistakes. But as she listened to others share their struggles, she began to see herself in their stories. Slowly, Lucy started to heal. She realized that while she couldn't change the past, she could still fight for her son's future. The next time she visited Jake, her words were softer, her tone more understanding. And while Jake didn't immediately respond, a part of him felt the sincerity in her efforts. In a shocking turn of events, Darnell, the very figure who had lured Jake into a life of crime, betrayed him. To save himself, Darnell framed Jake for a crime he hadn't committed. The betrayal cut deep, leaving Jake disillusioned and alone. As he sat in his cell, he replayed the choices that had led him here. For the first time, he admitted to himself that he didn't want this life anymore. The pain of betrayal became the catalyst for a newfound resolve to change. Through a rehabilitation program in detention, Jake discovered a hidden talent for writing. What began as a simple exercise became a passion, a way for him to process his emotions and express his dreams. His poems and stories revealed a depth of pain and longing, but also a spark of hope. The program's mentors encouraged him, showing him that his words had the power to inspire others. Writing became Jake's anchor, grounding him as he navigated the turbulent waters of his past. Family therapy brought Stan and Lucy together for the first time in years. Sitting in the same room, they were forced to confront not just their failures as parents, but also their pain as individuals. The therapist guided them through difficult conversations, peeling back layers of resentment and regret. Slowly, they began to see that their love for Jake was stronger than their differences. For Jake, seeing his parents united, even momentarily, planted a seed of hope that perhaps his family could be whole again. When Jake was released on probation, he faced the ultimate test. Old friends tried to lure him back into the life he had left behind, but this time, he stood firm. "I'm done," he said, walking away from the street corner where he had once spent so much time. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was a necessary one. Jake knew that if he was going to build a new life, he had to leave the old one behind completely. At a community event, Jake stood in front of a room full of young people, sharing his story. His voice, once filled with anger, now carried a message of hope and redemption. "I made mistakes," he said, "but those mistakes don't define me. What defines me is what I choose to do next." His words resonated deeply, inspiring others to believe that change was possible. For Jake, it was a moment of triumph, a testament to how far he had come. The Williams family sat together at the dinner table, a sight that had once seemed impossible. The scars of the past were still there, but so was the love that had brought them back together. Stan and Lucy smiled as Jake shared his plans for the future, his eyes filled with a determination they hadn't seen in years. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. In the end, their story was a powerful reminder that while brokenness is a part of life, healing is always possible when love and forgiveness lead the way. The story of Stan, Lucy, and Jake is a powerful reminder of the importance of family. It teaches us that while mistakes can leave lasting scars, love, understanding, and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds. Let us strive to be present for those we love and never underestimate the power of redemption. If you like this video and more true life stories like this, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel.